Okay, we're about to dive into one of the biggest, most famous rules in the kitchen. It's something you were probably told a million times as a kid. Never, ever, ever put metal in the microwave. But is that rule actually true? Or is it just one of those things we all believe without really knowing why?
Yeah, we've all heard it, right? It's like the first commandment of kitchen appliances. You put metal in there, and you're just begging for a light show that's gonna fry your microwave. It's a piece of common knowledge that's so deep in our brains, most of us just never, ever question it.
And right there, that's where the whole story starts to get really interesting. Because if metal is public enemy number one for microwaves, then why is the entire inside, the walls, the floor, the ceiling, a big metal box? And that mesh screen on the door, the one that lets you see your food spinning? Yep, that's metal too. This little contradiction is the key to unlocking the whole mystery.
So, to understand why some metal creates a fireworks display while the microwave itself is totally fine, we need to do a super quick crash course on how the thing actually works in the first place.
Okay, so inside every microwave, there's a thing called a magnetron. It shoots out these invisible energy waves, microwaves. And those waves bounce all around the inside of that metal box like they're in a pinball machine. When they hit your food, they basically grab onto the water molecules and make them wiggle and flip back and forth like billions of times a second. All that frantic movement creates friction, and that friction creates heat. It's what cooks your food from the inside out.
So, that's what microwaves do to water. But what happens when those same waves run into a piece of metal, which, doesn't really have a lot of water in it? Well, the reaction is completely different.
Instead of absorbing the waves, metal acts just like a mirror. It reflects them. See, metal surfaces are full of all these electrons that can just move around freely. So when the microwaves hit, these electrons basically form a shield and just bounce that energy right off. And that's exactly why the walls are made of metal, to keep all those waves trapped inside, focused on your food. But that reflection isn't the whole story. The real drama, the sparks, the light show we're all afraid of, well, that comes from a weird side effect of all those electrons sloshing around.
Think about it. All electrons have a negative charge, so they're constantly trying to push each other away to get as far apart as possible. On a nice, smooth surface, they can spread out evenly, no problem. But on a piece of metal that has sharp points or little crinkles, they get pushed into those corners. It's like a crowd of people all getting shoved into a tiny room. And those spots become super concentrated hot spots of electrical charge.
And when the electrical charge on one of those sharp points gets strong enough, it can literally tear electrons away from the air molecules around it. That charge then leaps across the gap as a visible spark, creating this superheated, glowing gas called plasma. That's the little lightning bolt you see. It's not the metal burning up, it's the air itself getting zapped into plasma.
But here's the funny thing. When YouTubers like ElectroBoom and TKOR actually tried to make this happen on purpose, they found it surprisingly hard to do. They chucked in spoons, forks, all sorts of stuff, and most of the time, nothing. I mean, the metal got really hot for sure, but that spectacular arcing they were hoping for, it just wasn't happening. And that brings us to the single most important, number one takeaway of this whole thing. When you're talking about metal in a microwave, the danger isn't about the material. It is almost entirely about its shape.
This is really the whole story right here. Smooth, rounded objects like a spoon or the inside of a can give those electrons plenty of real estate to spread out, so no charge builds up. But objects with a ton of sharp points and tiny creases, like a crumpled up ball of aluminum foil, the prongs of a fork, or a little twist tie, they create the absolute perfect conditions for that charge to get concentrated and, well, spark.
Now, for anyone who really wants to geek out for a second, there is one other factor: length. It turns out that a piece of metal around 12.2 centimeters long can act like a perfect little antenna for microwaves, which can amp up the chances of sparks. But honestly, for your day-to-day life, it's really the sharp edges that are the main villain here.
Okay, so what does all this science mean for you when you're staring at a plate of leftovers and realize you left the fork on it? Let's break down the rules you actually need to know. So the real rules are pretty simple. Number one, shape is king. Smooth and round is generally okay. Sharp and pointy is where you get into trouble. Number two, always, always keep any metal away from the actual walls of the microwave because a spark can jump between them. And the safest rule of all is still the simplest. If you have any doubt, just leave it out. So the whole idea that you can never put metal in a microwave, it's pretty much a myth. The reality is a lot more interesting, and it's all about the physics of shape. Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other pieces of common knowledge do we just accept as true that might be worth taking a second look at.